relative to the boat, it looked awfully big, and it moved much faster than I've ever seen a shark move.
Hey everyone, John here from Cast and Spirit. I'm glad you're here for this episode. We have back Dan Smith from howtocatchanyfish.com, and he's going to share with you his 5 favorite places to fish around the world, everywhere from the Amazon to the Great Barrier Reef. Dan has some awesome tips for you so you can plan your next fishing adventure. All right, without further ado, welcome back, Dan.
I have a couple right off the top of my head. The Amazon jungle, if you ever get a chance to go there, is just an amazing place. The first time I went was in 2008, 2009. And I kind of, going in, I kind of pictured it being like the movie Anaconda with these big snakes and giant mosquitoes and spiders and all this stuff. And it really, at least the part I went to in Brazil, it really was totally different than I expected. It was just a pristine, beautiful jungle. I was fishing for peacock bass, and they tend to live in places without mosquitoes because the water's has a lot of tannins, and it's too acidic for mosquitoes to breed and most bugs to breed. And so very few bugs, didn't see a snake, just beautiful, beautiful, pristine jungle. And I really got hooked on the Amazon from that trip. So I went a couple more times, and each time it was just an amazing place to fish. And if you time it right, the number of fish you can get in the boat is pretty amazing too, because it's not, some of the places are not very heavily pressured. So Amazon's definitely up there. I went to the Great Barrier Reef to fish one time. I really enjoyed that. I'd love to get back. I know that they've been having issues with bleaching, and hopefully that fishery won't suffer too much as a result of that. But that was just an amazing place. I think something like a third of the fish I hooked got eaten by sharks on the way in. So it was it wasn't and then probably another third broke off in the reef. So I probably only landed 1 out of 3 on a good day that I hooked on that trip. But it was a lot of action, and even when you're trying to reel past the sharks and having the sharks explode on your fish and this big bloody mess happening, it was a pretty memorable trip.
Would you remember what kind of sharks they were? Were they just reef sharks or?
They call them whaler sharks. They're kind of a generic looking brown shark. They probably averaged 1 to 200 pounds. Every once in a while I'd hook one. They were really aggressive. So sometimes you'd hook one on a big topwater.
Oh wow.
And man, it was a tiring fight wrestling these 100 to 200 pound sharks while you're trying to, fish for the giant trevally and the other stuff that you're actually fishing for. And then I had just an enormous tiger shark take the whole body off of about a 6-foot wahoo right at the boat that I had. I don't know how big that tiger shark was, but relative to the boat, it looked awfully big. And it moved much faster than I've ever seen a shark move. When you see them in nature shows and stuff, they tend to slow things down and do slow-mo, and they're just kind of cruising around, or even if they're attacking, they show it in slow-mo. But when you see it right next to the boat and you see how fast they can move when they want to, it's pretty scary. So that's 2 places. There's a place in the South Pacific called Aitutaki. It's in the Cook Islands. I went there on kind of a combo fishing / anniversary trip with my wife, and really enjoyed that. I caught a Napoleon wrasse there, which I'd been trying to catch for a long time. And it was just a really beautiful spot, very, very little sport fishing pressure there. Most people who go there go to fly fish for bonefish. So if you're trying to catch anything else, you're almost the only one doing it.
Was there any special technique that you did to finally land that special fish?
The wrasse? I'd hooked 13 of them before I landed that one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't having a hard time hooking them. I was having a hard time landing them. And the reason is they're a really strong fish. If you look at them, they don't look particularly tough. They look kind of soft, like a soft, colorful reef fish. But they're actually extremely strong, and they live generally in pretty shallow water around a lot of rocks. And so it's very hard to keep fish like that out of rocks, and they head straight into the rocks when they bite. So that one, the one I actually landed was probably in the 75, 80 pound range, and I was using a 100-pound braid with a 130-pound leader, which you'd think would turn most fish, especially most fish of that size. But it was just zipping the drag. I had the drag tightened so hard that I couldn't even pull it out with two hands, and it was just zipping the drag out. And I saw it heading into some coral, and I was like, "There's no way I'm going to stop it from getting in that coral." So I put the line completely slack as it was getting to the coral, so that it didn't cut. So I just completely slacked the line off, and it dove under the coral thing, but the line didn't cut because there was no tension on it. And so then we just kind of motored over to that coral head, which was, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 feet down, but the water was real clear, so you could see the fish down there hiding under the coral head. So we just sat there with the boat on top of it for a while and just stared at it for like 10 minutes. And then it kind of gingerly swam out from where it was. And once it got far enough away, we just gunned the boat and engaged the drag again and drove off and got it into deeper water where we could actually land it. So I think the reason I wasn't able to land the other ones is I tried to just stop them, and they weren't going to be stopped. Whereas with that one, I tried something I'd never done before, which is make the line completely slack, and somehow that worked.
I'm digging the teamwork that you and the captain had.
Yeah. He had never seen one of those caught, and so he was pretty motivated too.
Super cool. What other two spots do you really like to fish?
I definitely have a soft spot in my heart for Baja. When I lived in Southern California, used to drive down, several times a year and fish northern Baja, or fly down and fish kind of the East Cape area, near, east of Cabo. And it's been hit pretty hard, a lot of those fisheries, unfortunately, and the fishing isn't what it used to be. But there's still some great fishing to be had there, and the people are great, the climate's great. It's just kind of a unique place too. It's kind of this desert going into this really rich ocean. So Baja, and then I like Alaska a lot too. It's obviously a fishery that's only, most of it you can only fish for a couple months a year, but it's such a rich fishery in that time, when the salmon all come in and flood the rivers, and there's just so much life and so much stuff going on. So that would probably be number 5. There's a lot of places out there, and I've gotten to a lot of them, and there's even more that I haven't gotten to. But those are 5 that stick out to me.
That's super cool. I went to Alaska for my 30th last year, and you're totally right about the salmon. Just kind of, you can almost walk on them. They're so dense. Even in the smallest amount of water in a stream, you're just like, how are there thousands of these fish just all around? It was intense.
Yeah, that whole ecosystem just survives off that short period of time almost. All that protein comes in, and then it feeds so many different things.
High quality protein. Salmon's some good eats right there.
Yep.
Now, when you go to these places, do you have any tips or recommendations for how to bring fish back, or hiring guides, those kinds of not so much discussed aspects of your trip?
Yeah. Well, for some of those places, bringing fish back is just not very practical. The Amazon, usually, if you're going to any of the good spots, you're probably going to have to take a float plane, and you're probably going to have a pretty small weight limit. I think standard for a lot of those trips is about 40 pounds total of, all your gear and everything. So, if you're thinking about bringing back, a cooler with ice and stuff, there's just no way you're going to be able to do that. I guess you could buy some extra seats on the plane or something, but practically speaking, I don't think too many people bring any fish back from those types of trips. I don't do too many trips anymore where I bring fish back. A lot of the trips I try and go places that are not heavily fished, and usually that involves lots of travel and multiple plane flights, and sometimes very small planes. And so, bringing fish back isn't very practical. I'd say the one place that I've gone a number of times where I have brought a lot of fish back was Puerto Vallarta, because there's just direct flights from LA or from Houston, where I live now, and the airlines are pretty used to people bringing big coolers back with fish. I don't have any real real great tips on how to bring fish back. I do have a little portable vacuum sealer that I bring on those if I'm going to bring fish back, and that certainly prolongs the life and quality of the fish you do bring back. Like I said before, I tend to let things go more often than not now, but if I'm going to bring something back, I want to make sure it's going to be, not going to go to waste. So I treat it as best I can and vacuum seal it and get it iced and all that as quickly as possible. And sorry, what was your second question?
Yeah, just when you plan some of these kind of more exotic trips, is there a process in which you kind of figure out the visas or how to find the right guides, or how do you kind of know where to go or who to talk to or who to take you?
Yeah, I do a ton of research, and sites like my site are actually a good resource for that because you can hear people's experiences. Preferably, you can find people who are unbiased and are not affiliated with the guide or the lodge or wherever you're looking at. So there's a lot on the internet to read. You have to kind of weed through, some of the less credible stuff, and some of that just sort of comes with experience. I often call the people and try and talk to them about the fishery, and unfortunately, there are a lot of unscrupulous is probably too strong of a word, but there are a lot of operators out there that are more looking for your money and not as much caring about the experience or having as much knowledge about how to catch fish. So I like talking to people and see if they actually sound like they know what they're talking about and are as passionate about fishing as I am. It's always a good sign when I talk to someone and it's clear they care about fishing more than I do. That's the kind of people I like going with.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the podcast. Did Dan inspire you to pick a new fishing location that's out of the ordinary? If so, let me know. Go to castandspear.com, go to the contacts page, and leave a comment. I would love to know where you're going to be fishing in 2019. And if you haven't already done so, if you go to castandspear.com/podcast, you can listen to the other episodes. And if you find them enjoyable, please definitely subscribe, give a rating, give a review. I read them all. I'd love to know how I can make this podcast better for you. Also, if you haven't already checked out some of our videos on YouTube, go check out Cast and Spear on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and all those awesome places where we can connect and talk more and share our love for fishing. And with that, please go visit Dan at howtocatchanyfish.com. And be sure to come back tomorrow where Dan's going to talk about his favorite freshwater and saltwater fishes. They're definitely unique, to say the least. Come back tomorrow and see which ones he picked. All right. Keep those lines tight, everyone. See ya.